Hello, 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 everyone. Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator, coming to you Monday, Monday. Uh, and if this is your first time seeing me, I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. My name is Aurelia Davis. I am a retired educator from Chicago Public Schools, where I worked for over 31 years teaching in the elementary sector. I'm During that time, I also had the opportunity to work with teachers and did works with student teachers. But at the same time, I was allowed to do a mentoring program through the Board of Education, which I enjoyed tremendously. And from there, I continued and got my master's degree in teacher leadership because I felt it was good to have somebody in teachers' corners, and if I say that right. In other words, teachers are out there, but they still need that support, that ongoing support. I'm going to be honest, I really didn't have it in my, immediate circle, but I developed a relationship with the educators that I work with, and we were able to support each other in a lot of different areas, which was very, very helpful. Plus, I also established a very good relationship with my administrators from day one. Day one, I felt that was needed because what I wanted to do is they needed to be there to help me do my job, and it was successful for all the time I was there at that particular school. Well, today we're using a topic that it was a little different when I was an educator. It was very different when I was an educator, and that's called behavior management in the classroom. Behavior management in the classroom, meaning how students respond in a classroom, how they behave in a classroom, how they act in a classroom, and at the same time, it puts a different spin on it because I feel, and I'm not trying to be negative, but I feel that uh, most teachers that were coming through the time when I was teaching, we were, let me see what you call it. We were more mother. We had, my mom used a term called mother wit. And that particular term means that we were nurturers. Not saying that teachers are not nurturers now. We were nurturers to the point where um, what would happen? We were nurturers to the point where we would those students that were coming into our classrooms, what we would do is we would establish an immediate connection as far as teacher and student. Now, those are the words: teacher and student, or adult and child. I'll say it again: teacher, student, adult, and child. So, in the meantime, the more importance of both of those titles I just told you, was the difference between an adult and a child. An adult and a child. Our administrators at the time would request that we would dress in a professional manner. That means that we're not coming in, and I'm not getting on anybody's case, but we weren't coming in jeans. We did wear pants, and if we did wear pants, we were wearing pants and to the point where they were very professional looking. They looked like a business outfit. That was something that we were asked to do. And then, as I was going out of the system, the legging situation popped up, and people were starting to wear leggings. Women were starting to wear leggings. Well, back in the day, those were considered leotards, and we wore those when we, do whatever. But the leggings issue came up, and our principal pulled us together because the majority in the building were women, and she said that was not an appropriate look. And when it finally came down to it, she was telling us that we should not be dressing like our students. That was it. It was it. She said we should not be dressing like our students. So if there was we had to there had to be a distinct separation of a child and an adult. So we weren't dressing like our students. And it didn't make a difference whether we were, say the eighth graders, if you were 10 years older than that eighth grade or 5 years older than that eighth grader. That eighth grader looked at you, or a high schooler, let's put it in high school, that eighth grader looked at you as being an educator, and you being an educator, there was a distinct difference. There was a distinct difference between the student and the teacher and the adult and the child. It was there. And I can even go back a little further before I get deeply into my discussion. When I was attending school, there was a tendency for teachers to go into the field of education immediately. So a lot of our teachers were in their 20s. They were in their 20s, but they dressed to the level of being appropriate. So we did, when we were walking down the hall, you can tell who the teachers were and you can tell who the students were. There was a difference. There was a difference. It was interesting because my daughter was in a situation on this past week, and she was walking with her son and some of his friends and escorting them to the store and over there by their school. And so when she got into the particular store, the owner of the store asked and say, "And who are you?" She said, "I'm his mother." He said, "Oh, you're an adult." So that's my perfect example of how we are addressing today, because sometimes you cannot tell if we are adults or if we are children, because everyone is basically dressing the same. Okay, let me just be honest. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but in an educational setting, you as a teacher, you have to be very careful as to how that child addresses you or how that child looks at you in the role that you are serving him. You are serving him. In other words, you're the teacher. You are the adult. And I don't care how old those children are or how tall they stand, they are children under you. They are children under you. And that needs to be established more than anything else. Okay, so I went on a tangent for a while, but that's okay. That's because I have a real strong feeling about this. Then I would say that one of my questions was also, is there a difference between behavior management in the classroom and classroom management in the classroom? I would say no. I would say they go basically hand in hand, for the simple reason you are now given the responsibility of managing so many individuals within a small setting. Managing individuals in a small setting, and those individuals are younger than you, so you are responsible for their well-being. You are responsible for their well-being. So I have stated this before during some of my other lives, but what I had to find out is that the classroom management definitely entailed into my behavior management skills. In other words, my students, I would spend at least 2 to 3 weeks setting up and training my students to my classroom management style. I'll say that again, training my students to my classroom management style. And that would include my expectations of them. And basically, like I said, my expectations of them, because I was responsible for them. And I would let them know I am responsible. You belong to me for 6 hours and we have to make this work. And it does not mean that I sound off like a sergeant, but I did let them know that I was the one that had to control this situation. And it was not a free for all, for the simple reason that free for all would cause someone to get hurt and would create havoc. And it was not I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let that happen in my classroom. It's interesting because when you are a teacher, you are what are you doing? You are taking a child out of his home. And basically, what you're doing is you are indoctrinating them into your environment. I'll say that again. You are taking 2 or 3 or 4, 15, up to 28 children from their individual homes, and you are indoctrinating them into your environment. And therefore, you have to set up the rules and regulations of that environment as to what you expect them to do and what you expect them to obey, what you expect them to listen to, how do you expect them to listen. So for the beginning, I just want to be honest, the beginning of my teaching career, it was awful. I lost control, they lost control, blah, blah, blah. And then it got to the point, I would say about my 5th year, when I started to realize that my classroom management plan was going to guide and direct my students in learning, and especially in their behavior. And it was the type of thing where they never, ever knew what I was going to do. So I just sort of kept them guessing all the time. And I was not an ogre. I was not mean. I didn't have to be mean, but I was very authoritative as far as my speech is concerned. I let them know what I wanted them to do. And then I would repeat, what did I ask you, boys and girls, what did I ask you to do? What are we going to do? And then I would let them take on some ownership of what was expected of them also. And you would be surprised. Some children just want to be guided. Some students just want to know that you care. You care. Now, out of all of those years, were there some days that it didn't work? Of course there was. Of course there was. And that's where the nurturing came in place, where I would turn around and I would address that child individually to see exactly what was on. I didn't, they didn't come from my house last night. So I don't know what kind of things they came from in the environment where they live. And if I wasn't sure of that, I couldn't chastise them on something they had no control over. I say it again, I could not chastise them for anything they had no control over. So my own personal opinion, I think as I was coming out of the system, there were teachers, they started doing the pocket charts with the little colors, this color and that color and whatever. I didn't do that. I didn't do it. And I felt that it was somewhat artificial, because those colors could never talk to the children. Sometimes you needed to listen to them as to seeing what was on their minds to make them act a particular way. They respond differently to things. They respond differently to things, to the point where if something upsets them, they don't take the time out to just see that they're not talking about me. No, they're going to respond. They're going to respond immediately. They're going to respond. They're going to try to protect themselves all the time. And so I never did do the pocket chart with the colors. Okay, and I've seen, it's so funny, I've seen Facebook pages on it. Well, she put your color on this, whatever, and whatever. And even when I was picking up my grandson, one time he had color red, went from red to blue and whatever. And the teacher was telling it to me. And I told her, I said, I do not even know what you're talking about. I said, what I need to know is, what did he do wrong? And she basically tapped into me and told me that. And then what I did is I took my grandson off to the side and asked him about the situation. And then, even though he was putting everyone else's name in it, I asked him and I said, and what did you do? And what did you do? And what did you do? And he told me what he did. And I said, I said, did you get anything from it? Because he was he's kindergartner. Very smart. I said, did it benefit you any? Did you feel good about that? And he would be honest and let me know. I said, well, you know what? What I would do is I would approach it. If that ever happened to me, I would do this and I would do that. Well, I'm a grandmother, so I have the time to do that type of thing. His mother heard about it and she responded totally different, defending him and whatever. I said, you can't do that. I said, because when your children are not in front of you, you don't know what they're going to do. You don't know everything that you have set up at your home, because most likely and hopefully parents have some kind of behavior management plan at home. I'll say that again. Parents should have a behavior management plan at home. And me venturing out into the world and having more time on my hands and going to stores and whatever, sometimes a lot of parents do not have it. Okay. The way I see children acting in stores and acting in public, I'm assuming they don't have anything in place yet. I don't see it. I don't see it. Um, so, getting back to the classroom at hand, because of what we have all been through within the last 2 years, we as educators and as parents and whatever and teachers, you have a job in front of you. Your job is more tedious and more it puts you in a more stressed place now than you ever, because at one time when there were children and maybe one or two children would have some behavior problems and everything, now you're looking at about 5 or 6, 7 or 8, 9 or 10, and that is something that is not good. That's not good. And a lot of times there are triggers within the classroom itself. One child will trigger another classroom child, and then it's just like a ping pong effect. It basically all of the dominoes are knocking over at the same time. And if I was in that type of situation, I would stop teaching, because you can no longer teach. You don't have their attention. So why are you trying to continue to teach when all of this chaos is going on around you? You can't teach in that type of environment. And then what would happen is that you need to stop as an educator and reassess the situation. What happened here? How come this was not a good day? What did we do wrong? What triggered all of this? What triggered all of this? You have to realize sometimes it's the environmental, where the children are coming from, their environment. And sometimes you have to look at where they live, how they live, who they live with. Sometimes you have to look at things that have maybe happened that morning on the playground that continues after school has been in session and back to the playground. So all of those things, you have to put those little small fires out immediately. Immediately. Don't take anything for granted that, they'll fix it, they'll work it out themselves. No, they won't. They don't know how. They don't know how to fix it. They don't know how to manage it. But at the same time, you come as the authority. And I had no problem sharing with my children. I said, "Oh yeah, I used to have a fight. My sister would fight for me." So they know that you're human, and certain things affect you just like it affects them. But one other thing that I would suggest, that as an educator, if you do have those students that are in your classroom, and I have seen some videos that, oh my God, I don't know what happened. A child just going through a classroom and just ripping it to shreds. OMG. And the bad thing about it is that these teachers are taking videos of this, which does not help the child. And it's not, in other words, if you did have to record it, it would be just the recording for the administrators and the parent to see. But do not further what you're talking about. Do not further make it worse by videoing the child with his face and and whatever, because that puts a that puts a label on the child, and it basically follows them throughout school. And that's never, ever good. A child can have a bad year in first grade and have a fantastic in second grade. And that most likely means that something in that child's life has changed to make him better or to make him happy. He's a child. These aren't adults. These are children. Even though they act like adults, they are not adults. And you just can't give it to them that much responsibility. Please don't give them that much responsibility. I wanted to sort of cover maybe 3 things that I have been hearing about since I retired that are being tapped into as far as education is concerned. And it was funny because when I Googled it, I had to put schools beside the definition in order to get the definition as to how it related to schools. So the first one, I'll go back and start from what I didn't know about, but that I didn't know, and that was the behavior management, and as far as the pocket charts are concerned, and they're still selling those things. I don't know if you are one of those teachers that are using the pocket charts. Why don't you go to my website, aureliadavis.com, and tap on the, leave me a message as to saying if these are still working for you, if these pocket charts are still working for you, because I think some teachers have run out of colors. I believe some children have basically run out of colors. They have no more colors for some of these children because it's beyond the colors. The colors don't mean anything to them. The tabs and the cards don't mean anything because it's deeper than that. It's deeper than what you actually see in front of you. And that's what you have to realize as an educator. You're an educator, you're a nurturer. It don't necessarily mean you have to put your hands on children, but even that calming voice that they may have never heard before is something that they need to pull them close to your side and whisper, say, sweetie, I understand. There are some things you're feeling bad now. And all they have to do is nod and agree with you. You would be surprised how many of them basically just need that one-on-one, that one-on-one communication or connection with an adult that is willing to listen. It makes a difference if they're willing to listen. The next thing is restorative justice. Now, this is something that was basically started for ex-offenders, because what they were finding out is that after someone had become incarcerated, that there was still some skills that needed to be taught for that individual once they got out of, once they were no longer incarcerated. So the restorative justice, it says, empowers you to take on responsibility for yourself and sort of work through issues and problems and things like that. That's why within a lot of our jail systems, what's also happening is that we have they're starting to put heavy mental health departments within the jail system itself, because everyone that is going into that are committing crimes are not necessarily criminals. They may have some mental issues that have never been addressed or may have never been followed up on. So they're adding the mental health component to criminals. In other words, to incarceration, to jails. And then, but restorative justice, as far as education is concerned, it brings together a group of individuals, a group of children, to help work out problems and issues that might come up. And they're finding that they're doing this a lot more because of the bullying, the cyberbullying that's going on, and that cyberbullying that adults never see, but it's happening. And the unfortunate thing is they don't know it's really going on until, unfortunately, a child has committed suicide because of it. So that bullying that goes on, cyberspace bullying that goes on phones and chats and things like that, that can be very detrimental to a child. And then the last piece is social emotional learning. And what's happening throughout the country and throughout the states is that governors and state board of education is demanding funds for SEL, social emotional learning training, for the schools, for the teachers, and so on and so forth. And I'm interested in probably investigating myself, because I heard that there are certificate programs out there. I would like to delve in this a little bit better to understand exactly what it entails. I understand there's a curriculum. I understand that there are lessons that goes along with all of this. So maybe within the next couple of days, I'll be doing something like that. But in the meantime, what I would suggest to educators right now is to identify those children that are basically having the most difficulties in your classroom. In other words, then after you find, if you target those particular individuals, and this is something that you're doing privately for yourself, for your classroom, then you start charting anecdotals on these particular children as to what's going on in their lives. You may want to just even delve back into their folders and see exactly what's happening, what kind of home life they have. I'm going to be honest, you have to be very careful when you're talking to parents because a lot of that information parents do not want you to know. So you have to be your own investigative reporter as to find out why the child is doing things in your classroom that's not very good for the environment, that he's in at that time. Um, what I would do also is I would note those things in my lesson plans. That lesson plan is something that you see only, but at the same time, you are charting things in your lesson plans. You're charting triggers. Look at the days that the child acts up the most. Or what days. How is he on Monday? How is he on Monday? How is he by Friday? Have things sometimes things build up, and by Friday it's just gone off the charts. But at the same time, how is he on Monday? How is he on Monday afternoon? So does he seem very volatile in the morning, or is it in the afternoon or after lunch? What basically triggers him? And then at the same time, you need to note with this child, does this child have an IEP? Is he in a special program? Is he in any special programs? Does he need any? Is he under any particular resources within the building? A psychologist or counselor, social worker, all of those types of things. Are those things in his chart right now? And if they are not in his chart, your anecdotal and with working within your lesson plan, you are going to chart as much as you can while you can. And later, when you think that this is the type of situation where you need to bring the resources in that building together to analyze this child, you will have things documented. It will be documented. So, for the last couple of weeks, we've been talking, these lesson plans have gotten full. We talked about equity, and now we're talking about behavior management and classroom management. So your lesson plans is a guide, but at the same time, you note different things in your lesson plans to include all of these things that are happening in your classroom, because that lesson itself, if you cannot tap into these other things and get these things fixed, then unfortunately the lesson plan is not going to go over the way it's supposed to. I did also see another thing within the lesson. Some of the teachers were talking about their scheduling day. How is your day scheduled? And we talked about that. I talked about a little bit of that last week. I said sometimes, traditionally teachers have always had reading in the morning. There's always reading. Okay. That sometimes works, but we're finding out that children sometimes a little bit more hyper in the morning. So you may want to do math and then calm your day down at the end of the day to include reading, where they're reading and writing and journaling and reading aloud and those types of things, where math is a more active subject. That's something that you may want to do in the morning. But at the same time, each lesson plans for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, they don't have to all be the same. You may want to do reading on Monday because it's right after the weekend, but you may want to start math on Tuesday or Wednesday. So start to evaluate your lesson plans. You want to incorporate as much equity as possible. We talked about that last week, and now we're talking about behavior management. And all of those things go into your lesson plan. Those are all things that go into your lesson plans. I would even say with your lesson plans, if you had that one child that's having some behavior problems and whatever like that, they may need a lesson plan by themselves. Hello, you may have to set something up individually for that particular child. Do not always expect him to follow along with everything else. All children are not socially accommodating to others. Sometimes the self-esteem may be so low where they need their own individualized learning. And teachers are finding out that this is something that works a lot better for them, breaking them up into groups, doing individualized learning. Once you have a group of children doing one particular lesson, then you grab 2 or 3 and do something different with them, trying to keep them on task, trying to give them that individualized attention that they crave so much. They crave that individualized learning. They want to be noticed. They want to sit up under you. And it doesn't make a difference if they're in preschool or eighth grade. They all want that attention. And being with you 6 hours a day, you should give them whatever they need. So start writing some of these things down in your lesson plan book or noting them on your laptop or wherever you have your lessons. And a lot more to go over, but I'm not going to try to do it all today. But one thing I can say to you that if you feel that you need some help with your lessons, if you're having some issues within your classroom and you would like to see how you can compile or change your lessons around to meet the needs of your children, because the main lesson is the basic lesson plan is no longer useful. Now you have to do 2 or 3 things. You're meeting your curriculum standards. You're meeting all of those things, but you got to go about it differently. And you have to address different children different ways in order for how they learn and what they need in order to learn. So if you need some help with that, feel free to go over to aureliadavis.com, aureliadavis.com, AREULIADAVIS.com. Go over to the tab where it says book a session with me, and then we'll book a session. Click on the tab, work with me. I'm sorry, click on the tab, work with me, and let's book a session. I would be very, very happy to speak to you about some of these things, but it's interesting as we go into the year of this year. We're finding out that children came back to us from the pandemic and they were not whole. They were not whole individuals, and we have to fill in those gaps. And you, as an educator, you have that responsibility to do that. It is on you, yes, because when I taught, it was on me, and I did the best I could. And I had some successes. I really did have some successes. But go to aureliadavis.com, click on the tab, work with me, and let's book a session. This is Aurelia Davis, and I'll see you tomorrow. Keep on teaching. Love you. Take care. Bye-bye.